Welcome back, everybody. I am a victim of online shopping. Not really, it's my fault completely, but have you ever gotten so excited by a product that you see on some website and you order it right away and you realize you may have been duped a little bit by the creative photography in some of the advertisements? I'm not sure necessarily that this was the case, but I got this Unwelcome sign from Home Depot. It was clearly from one of those third-party sellers on Home Depot. I don't believe it was one of their products. And I think so because it was super expensive, in my opinion. It was $50-something, and I thought that was acceptable because in the picture it looked like it was a pretty big coffin-shaped unwelcome sign. They had it next to somebody's door. I don't know, it looked very impressive. But then when I got it, it came in a small box about this size, and I was super disappointed before I even opened it. Again, this was all my fault. The dimensions were listed on the website. And if I had really looked at it thoroughly, I wouldn't have clicked order straight away as I did. Certainly because these sort of signs like this are popping up everywhere in the stores this year. So you can certainly find one of these if you want to, but I don't want this. I want something much bigger, and that's what we're going to do today. We are going to use this inspiration piece, this unwelcome sign, and make our own unwelcome sign. So I really loved the colors and the design of this. Again, it's just the size. So we're going to put our own little twist on it. Let's go on outside and see what we can do. So there aren't a lot of materials that we're going to need for this project. Some of them I already had on hand, like these furring strips. I buy these for my Halloween projects all the time, so I just have a big stock in my garage. So I'm going to use a couple of these, but you can pick them up at Home Depot for $1 or so each. The other thing that we're going to be using are some of these 2x4 underlayment pieces of wood. I also like using these in my Halloween projects because they're very easy to cut with a simple utility knife, and you can fit these in the trunk of your car. Now, since I'm making a 6-foot sign, ideally we could have used one big sheet and just had, cut it out of one sheet. But again, I needed to fit this in the trunk of my car, so we're going to do it in 3 separate sheets, and then just use the furring strips as a border along the edges where we're going to screw them all together, and I think that'll look just fine. Aside from that, we just need a couple of things of spray paint. I just use the simple, cheap black spray paint. This one I had in my garage already. It's glossy, so that's fine. I'm going to use that for the border pieces, and then I'm also going to use it as a base coat for my fluorescent green that we're going to make instead of the purple. On our inspiration piece, I'm going to make it green just because I can't find a decent spray paint in a fluorescent purple, and I didn't want to use a little paintbrush and paint it by hand because it's such a big piece. So we're going to go with green, where we can do a big spray really quickly and then spend the time on the details. So I've gone ahead and drawn out my coffin on the 3 sheets using a little bit of math magic to kind of figure out the dimensions. I wasn't really thrilled with the inspiration pieces dimensions, so I found another coffin shape that I liked, kind of stole them, did some math to figure out how it would work. And then even after that, I didn't like it, so I just kind of fudged it. So with it all drawn out, all we have to do now is, again, take the utility knife and cut it out. I'm just going to use a metal straight edge so that I don't slice my fingers off, line it up with our template, and then use the utility knife. You're going to score it a few times, and then eventually you'll work your way through this board. There we go, we have a nice crisp, clean edge. It actually came out a lot better than I'm used to. So use a sharp blade, it really helps. All right, I've gone ahead and put an initial coat on our border pieces, and now I'm ready to spray the cutouts here. I'm probably gonna give the coffin maybe 2 coats of black. It's okay if it's a little streaky, because we're gonna do another top coat with the fluorescent, and it doesn't need to look perfect. I might put 3 or more coats on the border just so that we get a nice glossy finish, because I don't know, I do like the border to look good. But let's go ahead and get painting. So I ended up doing 3 coats of the black glossy paint on the wood trim and 2 coats of black paint on the base, and then about 3 coats of fluorescent paint, but it was very light. And you can see probably that bits are splotchy. There's black showing through here and there. And that's exactly what I want. I'm not looking for perfection on this because it's a Halloween prop. And along those lines, I went ahead and I cut the trim to size, just using a pencil to mark where it falls. So the angles aren't exactly perfect. And again, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for the gist of it. One thing I was careful to do, however, was make sure that the long end piece extends over all 3 boards, so that when I screw it into place, all 3 boards will be together. And if that is not enough support, I'm going to go ahead and put some pieces along the back side of it, going over the seam as well, just so it all stays together. But for now, the next step is to put my lettering on. So I didn't want to screw anything together. I left everything just apart so that I can make some templates for letters and get to painting. I printed out some templates for the lettering that I want to use. I honestly just used the lettering right off my other welcome sign and used some Photoshop to make it a little bit bigger. And then now we are going to take our ruler, going to measure it out so it evenly fits the space, and then we're going to be ready to paint it. I am going with orange. Originally I wanted to do either the yellow, which I really like, but when I compared them to all the skulls I painted last year, there's so little difference between the yellow and the green, I didn't think it would show up. My next preference would have been purple, but then I was concerned that the purple wouldn't show up too well against the bats that I'm going to be painting on, which I also photoshopped and printed out in various sizes. I didn't cut them out fully, primarily because I wanted to get a sense of the space, but once I make one template for each size, I'm just going to reuse it instead of cutting all these out. Anyway, that's beside the point. So the bats will be black. I ended up deciding on orange because the orange shows up very nicely under the black light. This is neon orange. And I think it will actually go very well with that pumpkin design that's part of the display. I had thought about doing a skull instead of a pumpkin, but now that I have decided to do the orange paint, I'm no longer second guessing myself. I think that makes perfect sense. The other thing that I did is I didn't screw anything together. It's just kind of sitting here, and I did that so that I can take each piece apart and, you know, paint it separately. It's just going to make working on it a lot easier than trying to deal with this big, massive piece here. And I can take it anywhere and go sit in front of the TV, do some tracing, trace all the letters, paint it. I think I'm going to have to put down a base coat, probably of primer. I think that'll probably make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to start with a base coat of primer and then do a couple of coats of orange until it looks smooth. Based on my painting of the skulls back here, it's going to be really hard to get a nice, smooth, pretty coat, especially when you turn on the black lights. You often see the streaky lines. If anyone knows how to get around that and make it look better, let me know, but I'm going to do the best I can, and it's time to get started. So like I said, first step, trace the letters. Then it's going to take me a while to paint. I'm guessing this is going to take hours and hours and hours of work. So let's just cut to the end. All right, the lettering actually turned out much better than I was expecting. So I went ahead, took my stencils, put them on, drew them out, painted them. I put 3 coats of paint on each, but as you can see, I did not do full orange letters. Actually, I used the primer. I put a couple of coats of primer to get this nice bright white background, and I was pleasantly surprised when I tested that under black light. It actually looks very purple. And I used the orange to outline each letter so that they're very distinct, and I think under the black light that makes a fantastic combination, so that was a nice little pleasant surprise. Now because this is going to be outside, I'm going to seal it with some general waterproofing seal. Just going to brush it on. It only takes one light coat according to the directions. Of course, it's going to come on milky, but it will dry clear. Because I have done this where I haven't sealed some of these projects in the past, and all of this painting will fade a bit. So I'm hoping this is just going to help prevent some of that. But regardless, it should at least make it through the season. All right, while the waterproofing is drying on my sign, I'm going to hang my light fixture. I'm going to have the sign hang here on this little section of wall, and since I have the balcony here, I put another one of those pieces of wood, painted black, just sort of overhanging it a little bit. And then I took one of these utility lights, it's just a standard sort of garage light, I spray painted it black, and then I'm just going to hang it here in front of the sign so that we can put a black light in it, and it's going to shine down and light up the sign. And then to give it a little bit more Halloween flair, I'm going to take some of this chain, this plastic chain from the Dollar Tree, and then attach it to the cord just to give it a little bit more of a spooky feel. All right, there we go, quick and easy. Nothing is installed permanently, so this is the perfect way to hang some accent lighting. Now, because that sign is 6 feet tall and we've got a little bit of a bump up here, the sign's going to hang to about here, so I think it's got a good placement up there and gives it a little bit of a spooky vibe, but it's going to be really unobtrusive and not take away from the focus of the sign itself. The only thing we need to do now is add a black light so that we can really see it glow, but we're going to take care of that a little bit later. All right, now really we should be waiting about 24 hours for the waterproofing to dry, but it's been an hour or so and it feels relatively dry enough for us to continue because the waterproofing does seem to be warping the boards just a little bit, so I want to go ahead and secure it with the trims to help prevent some of that warping. Now, because we are going to be screwing it from the bottom up, because I didn't want the visible screws in the front of the sign, I went ahead and taped it together. I used a heavier duty tape to tape the seams and then used the blue tape around it just to kind of put the trim in place so that it's not going to slide around as I try and just screw it together using some random screws from the garage. Now that I have it taped together, I'm going to try and flip it over and do it from the top down. It's time to flip it over and see how I did. All right. It seems to be pretty sturdy offhand. I'm going to go ahead and take off the rest of this tape. Offhand, it looks pretty good. I did misjudge a couple of things. I left a few screws out, so I'm going to add a couple of more there. Some of the seams don't line up perfectly, but you got to remind yourself this is just a Halloween prop. It doesn't need to be perfect, and for my purposes, fast is a lot better than perfect. And we can just touch up anything that might be a little misaligned. I think there might be some instances where some of the green backing extends a little bit past the black trim. It's all right, I'm just going to paint it black, you'll never see it. So let me go ahead and get those extra screws in, and then we're going to try and hang this thing. All right, once again, because I don't want to attach anything permanently to my house, I'm going to hang this using some fishing line, and I'm hoping that's going to disappear in the dark and make it look like it's affixed to the wall. In order to do that, I need to put a couple of little eye hooks at the top so that we can loop the fishing line through, and then I'm just going to spray paint them black so that you can't see them. All right, so what do you think? Obviously, it's a little bit different from our inspiration piece. Of course, we went with different coloring, a different shape, and obviously it is much bigger. The one thing that makes mine a lot different, though, is it's going to fluoresce at night. Now, we still have to put in the light, and our friends at On For You have sent me 2 different types of black lights to test with this project. So we are going to do that in part 2 of this video, so stay tuned for that. Before we go today, though, I wanted to say a special thank you to all the patrons who help support the channel. If you are interested in joining our Fright Club, you can do so via the link to my Patreon page in the description below. So that's going to do it for today. Again, stay tuned for part 2. Till then, take care and happy haunting.